Mic check, check 1, 2.
Hello and welcome to Tutress Talks. I'm your host, Jeff McAdam. Come on in, grab a seat, make yourself comfortable. We're talking about screen time for kids this episode. How much is too much? And speaking of which, did you see the decision that one country made banning social media for kids under the age of 16? Take a listen.
Earlier this week, kids under the age of 16 in Australia woke up to find they were locked out of their social media accounts thanks to a new law.
The law, the first of its kind in the world, means potentially 1 million accounts across nearly every major social media platform. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Reddit, Facebook, X, and Snapchat are being deactivated.
They are saying in Australia, it's impacting our children and we're doing something about it. And I applaud it.
Like 77% of Australians surveyed say that they support this. So there really is widespread support there. But you are seeing so many young people, ironically, go on Reddit before the ban even happened, chatting about, okay, how are we going to get around this?
Well, time will tell just how truly effective a ban like that really is, as well as the impact of it long term as well. We're bringing in an expert on this episode who's from down under, who's going to talk a little bit about that, but then she's going to dive more so into the generalities of the impact of screen times on younger children. She and her husband help create software that regulates screen time for families. So if you're ready, let's get set. Let's rock. She has her master's in psychology. She is the co-founder of ScreenCoach. Please welcome to the show, Stephanie Kakrin. Hey, Stephanie.
Hi, everybody. All the way from Melbourne, Australia.
Welcome to the show. This is pretty significant, what is going on in Australia. To make a move like this is interesting. First of all, just what is your thoughts, and do you think it will actually be effective?
I like the intention behind it. I like the idea that we are needing to keep kids more safe online, and we need to help kids to manage their own screen time. However, I don't think it will work because already there are other social media apps turning up that kids are switching to that won't be restricted, and if those ones get restricted, they will just find the other way. Gaming is a really big problem, and I think it's a step in the right direction. I do think that we need to protect our kids. I also see that there are schools that are moving to dumb phones for their middle school students instead of smartphones, and there are even schools that are pulling tech altogether and going back to textbooks and pens, because when we talk about that dopamine hits, it's impacting our kids' ability to focus and be able to, learn anything in school. And we've seen the huge, massive boost in ADHD and neurodiversity and kids needing special learning outcomes. Learning, different ways to learn and extra help, etc. Mm-hmm. And I believe that the impact of screens on the brain and also, nutrition and food. There's a lot of lifestyle things, but I think screens is actually a big factor in that. And there's a book that I read, and the name of it's going to escape me now, but it was from a psychiatrist who dealt with behaviorally very challenged children. And by taking away screens, she solved 95% of their problems.
It is. I think what we're going through right now is fascinating. And I think looking back 10 to 15, maybe 20 years, maybe it's not even that far, but 5 years from now, we'll be able to make a lot of interesting observations in terms of the impact. By the way, I'll have to Google what a dumb phone is.
The old flip phone, like the Nokia flip phone, okay, where you can literally just call and text. There's no apps on it.
Before I got into the childcare space, I was a television reporter. And I remember I used to load my videos, this is 15 years ago, but I used to load my videos into YouTube, and I would watch the analytics on when, the attention rates dropped off. Did people make it to 20 seconds? Was it 30 seconds? And depending on how I structured my story, how could I get people to stay longer? And as time just continued, I think I was really honing in on my skill and making it better. But I did notice if you didn't have something in that first 3 to 5 seconds, it was tough to keep attention. And I think it's gotten it's gotten even worse, in the last 5 years,
Yep.
especially with like TikTok. If it's not within the first second or two, you just keep shuffling through. And I have to imagine that is, making lasting impressions on people and the way we think and operate. And,
Yeah. So there's a book called Stolen Focus by Johan Hari that talks about the fact that our attention spans are shortening because we're training our brains to have those short dopamine hits and short attention spans, and it becomes very difficult to sit still for an extended period, to watch a long movie. I have a friend that runs a dance school, and she said even in the last 5 years, the number of people that get up and down in the audience who are watching the dance concert has just increased exponentially. People just can't sit still and focus.
And Stephanie, you're qualified, obviously, to talk about all this. You have a master's in psychology, but, also interestingly enough, you're a mother of two. You've kind of been through this yourself with your own kids. What was that experience like?
Yeah, so our journey started when our eldest was around about 13 and was struggling in school, some bullying, some social awkwardness, just not fitting in, not feeling at all okay in the world. And he turned to screens to cope, I guess. And by the age of 14, ended up with a full-blown gaming addiction. And so whilst the social media ban is a good step in the right direction, the reality is that A, kids will find their way around it, and B, gaming addiction is also a very, very serious problem. And my husband, who's the tech head of the partnership, he tried various solutions on the market that all failed, and a lot of them are simply like controlling, like they just cut you off. And we are cooperative parents. We like to actually work with our kids. We include our kids in major life decisions. That's the kind of parents that we are. And so we came up with, he really came up with the idea of ScreenCoach, and then I brought my psychology background in because, it's a different approach to managing screen time, which we'll talk a little bit about later. But that's where it all started. So as a parent, I understand the struggles more than most, or as much as many.
Yeah, really interesting. And we'll get to, you're the co-founder of ScreenCoach, and I was checking out the app, the software, really, really interesting. We have a 5 and 4-year-old, so we're kind of just treading into this water, and I want to know a little bit more about it here, and we'll get to it. But I also kind of, want to just hit on the subject matter first, and that is, the kids are going to be home for the next 30 days for, the majority of the time. And it's important to remember, screen time, it seems like it's like this really awful thing, bad, don't let your kids have screen time. But you do a really good job pointing out that not all screen time is in fact a bad thing. Is that right?
Yeah, so for children over the age of 3, a little bit of screen time each day, as long as it's age appropriate and it's very strictly regulated in terms of the amount of time they're spending, we think is a really good thing. So these are some of the benefits of screen time. We're big screen users in our family. It's all about moderation. It's all about teaching the kids how to self-manage by putting the guidelines in yourself at the beginning and then having those habits formed later on. So the benefits of screen time, which, not a lot of people talk about, but there are some really good things about screen time. The early digital literacy, so that kids can find their way around computers, because the reality is we live in a high-tech world. There are enhanced learning opportunities, and kids can teach themselves almost anything. And our social media ban includes YouTube in Australia, and I don't agree with that, because our kids can learn so much off YouTube as long as it's monitored and the parents are having regular conversations with the kids about what they're watching. Our daughter is 16 and she's highly creative, and she has learned a lot of her art techniques. She's learned how to crochet. She's learned how to do cake decorating. She's learned baking. She does all sorts of new cooking and recipes, and all things that she's learned off YouTube. So there are a lot of opportunities for the kids to learn, for the social interaction when the kids get a bit older, that they can, chat with their friends if they're isolated. And we saw that obviously during COVID, but also, if you were holed up in a snow event. Yeah, so there's lots of good things about it.
Is there like some magical formula? I mean, is there too much time? Is it 2 hours too much a day? Is it 10 hours for a week? How much screen time is too much screen time?
Okay, so these are the government guidelines that you've put up here, and this is pretty universal around the world. Having said that, so the American Pediatric Association goes by these same guidelines. So they recommend that kids under 2 get 0 screen time. Kids 2 to 5 get less than 1 hour, and this includes TV. Kids 5 to 12 get less than 2 hours, and teens 13 to 17 get less than 4 hours. Now, I would say that they're a good guideline, but it's also you need to adjust according to your child. So you need to observe your children's behavior when they're using screens and what they're actually doing on the screens, because playing a very high anxiety, high arousal, when I say arousal, I mean physiological arousal, games like Fortnite or first-person shooter games where there's a lot of intense time frames, etc., can really cause a lot of anxiety and a lot of meltdowns and tantrums with children. So if you're finding, but then other children can't even tolerate, more than half an hour on even a simple, kiddie game, like even a learning game. For some children, more than half an hour is too much for them, because you see meltdowns and you see their attitude changing and stuff like that. So it is very much limited. And I'm pretty sure in Canada, the Pediatrics Association has changed the guidelines to say that they're a little bit more, they're not so sort of stringent with the guidelines. They're a little bit more fluid, because it depends on what the kids are doing on the screen, and also how old the kids are, and also whether the kids can tolerate enough as much or not.
Yeah, those are all interesting points. And I see the teens 13 to 17 less than 4 hours.
Yeah.
That feels like a lot of time. But before we hopped on this call, I pulled up my cell phone to check my own screen time on a daily basis on my phone. Just my phone. We're not even talking about the computer. And I could see why that number's at 4. It sounds like a lot, but in reality, you can get to it kind of quickly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what do you feel like kids, what are they really doing? Are they spending their time on, is it phones? Is it video games? Maybe in the case of your kids?
Yes.
What have we found?
24% of kids 5 to 14 are using devices more than 20 hours per week. Now, that's an Australian statistic from 2023. But we suspect that the problem is actually a lot bigger than this. 90% of parents consider the screen time their number one health concern for their children. And a lot of parents are feeling very helpless and, just not able to rein it in. The screens are just so alluring. And the tech giants make it, they hire psychologists, they spend millions of dollars on psychologists and psychiatrists to make it, whether it be social media, whether it be video games, whether it be, the simple games that 5-year-olds play for maths games or whatever it is. They deliberately make them so that they're just that little bit challenging, not too challenging. And, if it's not challenging enough, the kids aren't going to be engaged. And it really impacts the child's brain, but it also impacts the adult's brain. And I'm sure that many parents listening to this will understand the allure of social media and of constantly scrolling. And it's very, very difficult to control on our own, because it has been designed to be so addictive.
This is like a debate I feel like tons of parents have. And this is maybe more so just your opinion. When do you feel like is the right time to get your kids into doing it into using screens? And I ask because we have a 5-year-old now in kindergarten and a 4-year-old in TK, which is a transitional kindergarten class, and they both get screen time. My son gets an iPad. that he can take home, and my daughter gets one that she can use in the classroom. And I remember at first I was just like, this seems awfully young. But you also, to your point earlier, you also don't want your kids to get left behind, because technology is the future. I got my dad who's here visiting, and he's taking AI courses while he's here. So he knows that the technology is always advancing. Like, if you're not with the time, you're behind the time. What do you do? And do you have an opinion on how soon is too soon to get your kids going on screens?
No, but I will say that there are parents who are super strict and won't give their and have been determined not to give their child any devices until they're 10 or 11 or 12. And to those parents, I say the kids will catch up, because kids are fast learners and they will catch up. So, there's definitely not a factor of, if you don't give your kids a device until they're 10, that they're never going to, they're going to be behind forever. Having said that, I don't see a problem. I mean, our daughter was playing, a little bit every now and then with an iPad when she was 2 or even 18 months old. I've got a photo of her navigating her around an iPad. But we would only give it to her for 15 or 20 minutes, and then that would be it for the day. She'd watch a little bit of TV. TV is different because TV is different because it's more passive, because you're sitting back and you're allowing the pictures to come to you. Whereas actual device time is more active. So the child is more engaged, and it does have more of an impact on the brain. The issues with developmental issues in preschoolers from 2 to 4 to 5 are serious. There's some serious issues. I've spoken to numerous social workers who work with families with children with developmental delays, speech issues, emotional regulation issues, and a lot of it is caused from too much screen time, because up to the age of 5, children have to learn how to speak. They're learning how to regulate their emotions. They're learning how to get by in the world. And there's also emotional and nervous system co-regulation with a close adult, which is usually the parent, that is critical for that developmental stage. So if kids are on screens too much, they will not learn how to speak. You cannot learn how to speak from a screen. They will not learn how to regulate themselves. They will, and so we're seeing a lot of kids with issues before they even start school because of too much screen time. And not only from the kids, but also from the parents. So as parents, it's critical that we put our phones away and that we really consciously engage with our kids. And I know that's difficult. I have always found that difficult to engage with my kids. It's just the way I am. I have, a low level anxiety, like all the time. There's always something going on, but you really have to be conscious of spending that time with your kids and allowing them as well that free play time where they can decide and just explore and decide about how to engage for themselves away from screens, how to do pretend play with that toy. And 1 minute a child, says, oh, Mom, I can't do this, whatever, and they hassle you a few times. It's very easy to just put a screen in their hand. But we need to really ride that out. It's really difficult, but it's something that we really need to do. And then from that slides point of view, as the kids get older, the screen issues become issues around mental health, around lack of sleep, because the screen brightness impacts our circadian rhythms. It impacts our hormonal regulation so that we don't release enough melatonin when we're trying to get to sleep. It affects the kids' ability for self-direction and creative play. Their gross and fine motor coordination, because they're not doing things with their hands. They're not physically running and doing all those things. And then also there's the mental health concerns, not just from bullying and cyberbullying, but from the continuous engagement from the screens actually elicits anxious response in the body, because it's just not a natural thing at that constant stimulation, and there's not enough physical activity, and there's not enough sleep. All impacts our mental health.
And I don't know if Australia is the same as the United States, but there are just more and more families, more and more parents are picking up second jobs, or maybe they're doing, something on the side, freelancing 100%. On the side. And so it's like parents are. I'm sure they'd love to be even more engaged with their kids,
Yes.
but have the financial responsibility of trying to do more in order to stay afloat. And it's easy to
Absolutely.
have the kids, just
Absolutely,
easy.
100%. And that I actually wrote a whole blog post about that. The real reason for screen time is that parents are overwhelmed. They're often working two jobs, or they're working one job like a lot because of the pressure, because of the cost of living, literally just to keep food on the table. And I really, my heart goes out to all parents who are trying to do their best for their kids. And we're having less children as well. And I hope and that's one of the other reasons why we invented ScreenCoach, to help take that load off the really busy parents. But also, we're going to share some tips that I think hopefully will help
Oh,
as well.
I think it's also interesting and important to get on the the science side of it too, to really understand
Yes.
what's going on. Can you break it down? What is going on inside of our brains that gets us to the point where this is a problem?
Yeah. So a lot of people have probably heard of dopamine. So dopamine is an absolutely critical hormone that is released in the brain in anticipation of a reward. And it literally drives our motivation to do anything. So they did experiments in rats where they took away the dopamine pathway somehow, and basically, literally, the rats had even no motivation to eat or do anything to even help them survive. Okay, so dopamine's critical. But what happens when we're using too many screens, and that's why they're so engaging, is that we get these constant little micro dopamine hits that are artificially elevated compared to normal life. Okay. So in normal life, we might get a little dopamine hit from, as an adult, from, tidying up a corner in the home, or from having a lovely conversation with a friend, or from, just those general things, or from eating a good meal or making a good meal, just those little things throughout the day. Okay. So they might be spaced apart and they're little bits here and there. But when we're on social media, when we're gaming, when we're even playing even cards or whatever, the dopamine hits come thick and fast. And what happens is it actually increases our dopamine tolerance. So if you could just pop that slide up again.
Yeah, you
So
got it.
the more dopamine hits that we get in a short period of time, the more we need in order to feel good and in order to have any motivation. Okay, so the set point actually increases, and then we need to feed it more, and then it increases again, and we increase it again. And this is actually the same addiction cycle that we see with alcohol addiction, with cocaine addiction, with gambling addiction. Like, these are really serious things that are happening. And when our kids are young and in that core developmental phase, we need to be really careful that they have extended periods off screens, because the good news is that if you spend time away from screens, that set point quickly comes down. However, if the kids have been using a lot of screens in that short period after you take the screens away, it's literally a withdrawal. So the kids are bored, nothing stimulates them. It's because that dopamine set point is so high that the little things that would have given them dopamine hits otherwise, like building a little Lego truck or doing a drawing or coloring in, they just don't offer that same stimulation. And so the withdrawal that's a serious thing. That's not just the kids being difficult or being tantrums because they want to get their own way.
Is it tougher then if you're talking about a 10-year-old who's used to watching 3 hours of TV a day and being on his iPad, to suddenly take that away? I would imagine that is a tougher habit to break than talking about a 6-year-old who's just started watching TV, maybe watches an hour a day. I guess the point that I'm getting to, from your experience, does it take some kids much longer to break
Yes.
some of those?
Yes,
And
absolutely.
yeah. And what do you do as a parent? You just hang in there and try to stick with it as best you can.
So I've got some specific tips for parents who would like to do, really start reducing the kids' screen time during the holidays significantly. So the most important thing is, if you can, is to get the kids doing activities, like pre-planned activities, for the first couple of days that you want them to be off screens. So get them outside, get them playing with friends, get them doing like, keep them busy basically, so they're not just sitting at home feeling the pain. Okay, so the first one is about managing screen times is be compassionate, okay, and mindful that it's hard for kids to get off screen. It's hard for us to get off screens. Just think about yourself.
Yeah.
If someone was to say, right, I'm taking your phone away and good luck to you, I would not be very good, because I'm totally addicted to my phone and I check it for everything and use it for everything. The other thing that's really important when limiting screen time is to have really strict routines around how much screen time they're allowed and when, because kids will nag to the extent that they think that the parents will cave. Okay? So the more that they think you will cave, the more they will nag you. Now, if they know that they can only be on screens during the holidays between 10 and 11 in the morning, and between 4 and 5 in the afternoon, and there is absolutely no negotiation, no amount of nagging is going to change that, then they won't nag and they will just deal. I mean, they'll ask occasionally. Kids will be kids. They'll try you out. But if you can keep those really strict routines, then the kids will be able to get into that new habit. As parents, like, watch your own screen time. It's not really fair to insist that your kids are off screens and reading a book or getting all their snow gear on and going outside if you're sitting and scrolling on your Instagram. So just be really mindful of that. We all need downtime, but use that time when your kids are on screens if you want to relax and be on screens as well. Just be really mindful of what you're modeling as well, because kids do as we do, not as we say. The second thing is that, it's really powerful to set up rewards, so that if the kids spend 2 hours off the screens and they don't nag you and they don't give you a hard time and they let you finish your work or they let you, cook dinner or whatever it is, that you can reward them, and they do their chores, that then you can reward them with half an hour or an hour of screen time, depending on how old your kids are and what your kids are doing. So that's a really powerful way. And it's kind of using the reward system that they love from the screens, in real life. And so, and younger kids, they really love that kind of approach.
Like you said before, you guys have gone through it from a family perspective, and so you decided to do something about it. Can you tell me a little bit about ScreenCoach? How does it work, and what is it about?
So the summary is that ScreenCoach is basically 3 systems in one. So it manages screen time. So you can set those limits and that routine into ScreenCoach, and outside of those times that the kids are allowed on screens, it blocks them from using their devices. So it works across iPhone, Mac, Windows laptops, and Android phones, and obviously iPads. So if the kid has used up their screen time on their phone or their iPad, they can't just simply open their school laptop and start playing again. So it works across all the devices. And it has inbuilt rewards, and you can, as a parent, it's completely customizable. So you set what kind of behavior you would like to reward, and they can get tokens for screen time, which will automatically convert. And they also get gems, which convert into pocket money, and it keeps like a virtual bank balance. So it helps the kids to manage their money as well, which is something that we're really passionate about, is helping children to budget and save money, because in this digital world without physical notes and coins, kids find the whole money concept quite difficult. So if they can earn 50 cents or $1 from doing some chores around the house, then they can budget and save up for their things.
I really like the layout of it too. I'm going to show just really quickly, and again, just so that there's clarity in what we're talking about. Stephanie, you and your husband Peter, you are co-founders in ScreenCoach. This is an app. Is it software? I want to make sure I get the terminology right on this. But also, it's meant to tackle this problem firsthand. Like you had said, it is something that monitors the screen activity across all devices that your kids may use, and parents are setting limits on it so that we're putting a cap. So you mentioned, we know kids 4 to 5 should be 1 hour a day, or up to 14 it's up to 4 hours a day. Whatever the limits might be, you can actually set that through through the app, through the software.
Absolutely. The beauty of it is that it takes the onus away from you being the bad cop and being the strict parent, and it puts it on the app. So you know, and parents have said to me, oh my gosh, like when ScreenCoach tells my 6-year-old that her time's up, she just puts the iPad down and goes find something else to do. Whereas if I say to her, okay, your time's off and have to give up, she hates me. She hates on me forever. So it even though the kids know that you're the one that's installed it, the psychology of it is very, very different when ScreenCoach is enforcing the rules rather than the parents. And the kids love being able to earn more time. So as long as they're doing their physical activities, as long as they're getting enough sleep, as long as they're doing their chores around the house, then, you know, they can have more screen time.
Before we go, I want to make sure we put the code up on the screen. Anybody who is interested in checking out ScreenCoach, we're offering a special right now. Sign up before January 31st and use the code TUTRIS05 for a 5% lifetime discount. And Stephanie, it's myscreencoach.com. Is that right? Is that where they need to head to?
And I will say to parents, don't wait until it gets out of hand. Like if you're starting to see the signs, it's a really good idea to install something like ScreenCoach now before it gets out of hand and towards an addiction when it'll be much more difficult to implement. If you can set up good habits early, that's something that I regret, I must say, looking back, is that we didn't set up those good habits early when we saw the signs. And then, you know, and then the kids just grow up with those rules and they just understand, you know, no screens at the dinner table. We've always had that. And our kids don't even ever question. They never bring their iPhone or iPad to the table. It's just we've always done it. And so it's just a normal thing. So if you can set up those habits and it becomes normal early, then that's the best way to go about it.
Great advice. I'll be taking that into consideration as I move forward. Stephanie Kakrin, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciated the conversation.
Thanks for having me.